today again we are having a very wonderful person, a very wonderful, great guest with us. And he's wonderful because he's my good friend, because he always gives us wisdom with his talks, with his knowledge of geopolitics, especially the Middle East region. But he's also great right now because he has witnessed history in writing. He was the first-hand account. He's the first-hand account of the historical Abraham Accord between Israel, Bahrain, and United Arab Emirates. He was with Benjamin Netanyahu, also known as Bibi, the Prime Minister of Israel, when he flew from Jerusalem to United States. He was in the White House when everything was going on. He was witnessing everything, and he was witnessing that air where love was everywhere. So, welcome, Owen.
Happy to be here. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to talk to you as always.
And Owen has sent a gift for us. It's his clicks, which you won't find anywhere from that historical ceremony in the White House. So first, let's have a glance on those pictures.
Flags! Carry! Flags!
No, not yet. Oh, you're ready. I'm gonna wear them in the phone.
Thank you, Owen. It was wonderful. We were,
My pleasure.
we wish we were also there. But anyway, Owen was there from our side. So, Owen, tell me, the metaphor I used, that love was in the air. Is it true?
Listen, it was funny, as we were saying before, throughout the times I was going on air from the event, I kept comparing it to a wedding, that it had the atmosphere of a wedding. And you know, Guru, it's interesting, the metaphor even goes further back. If you look back over the past 10, 20 years, Israel was often said to be the mistress of the Gulf states, to be dated, to be talked to have a liaison with, but never to be taken out in public. And then what we've seen over the past few years, even the past few months for sure, has been is essentially dating, essentially a courtship between Israel and these countries in the Arab world. And then, of course, the big ceremony in the White House that felt very, very much like a wedding. And with all the guests there and with all the pomp and circumstance and with the celebration in the air. And so it was, because, you know, that. And so it was really a striking metaphor. And it really did feel that way. So, yeah, absolutely. Love is certainly in the air right now. The question is, how long will the honeymoon be? The honeymoon is certainly well underway from what we've seen between these countries, and again, potential of other countries to come along. But how exactly the marriage develops in the long term, will this be a good marriage, a bad one, a rocky one, a one filled with love? That is, of course, remains to be seen. It will be very, very interesting.
I wish that you guys' family must expand and marriage should be a successful one. Anyways, so just tell me, Owen, what was the talks between the journalists, senior journalists from Arab and from Israel, and as well as the European countries present in the White House?
Well, listen, it all happens really quickly. First of all, so viewers know, because of the pandemic, we were under very, very strict restrictions. We were not allowed to leave our hotel except to go to the official event. So we were 2 blocks away from the White House for a day and a half. We weren't allowed to take a walk around. We weren't allowed to take a walk around Pennsylvania Avenue. You know, I hadn't been to the United States in 4 years. I couldn't see my uncles. I couldn't see my friends. I couldn't see the city. We were basically chained to the hotel. Obviously, a completely reasonable restriction. I don't think anybody has any problem with it, but it just shows how much of a restriction we were under. At the actual event, you know, it happens really, really quickly. And also because of the pandemic, they were trying to keep people as separate from each other as they could. But there was some interaction with Arab journalists, some that made news here in Israel. As for the White House press corps, for example, a little bit. We did see, of course, the guests on the White House lawn, a lot of them whom we interviewed. I actually saw someone I worked with at a law firm back in New York 10 years ago, who now has a job in the administration. So we did see them and have some interaction, but again, unfortunately, a little bit more limited than we would have liked. What I can say is that there was an Israeli delegation that had gone to Abu Dhabi 2 weeks earlier, I think. And that delegation had on it a number of the Israeli diplomatic press corps, unfortunately, was not part of the trip. And they had extensive interactions with Emirati counterparts. That was a big part of that trip. So these types of people-to-people contacts are happening. They're very much happening. They're going to be happening in droves over the next few months. The Emiratis are swinging the doors open. I'm sure the Bahrainis will too. So there's a lot going on. At the actual event, it was a little bit faster paced. So we didn't, and because of the pandemic restrictions, I don't know if we had as much opportunity for that as we would have liked.
So who's next in the family?
You know, it's a question everybody's asking. First of all, we have a famous song that we sing during the Passover Seder in the spring called Dayenu. It would have been enough, talking about all the wonderful things that happened to the Jewish people after the Exodus from Egypt, and saying if only this had happened, it would have been enough. And that's my feeling whenever we talk about this question, that if the process were to be frozen here and it were only to be this warm developing normalization with the UAE and with Bahrain, it were to end there, it would be enough. I mean, this is so wonderful from Israel's perspective in and of itself, that we're just in a place where we just have this surplus of bounty, if you will. But there do seem to be more countries that are interested in coming along. The names that are often talked about are Oman and Sudan. In Sudan, it's complicated by the political transition there, and they have this two-headed government that's both military and civilian. So there are some internal obstacles, I think, to getting that done, although potentially some real incentives for Sudan to do it. They really have things that they need from the United States that they could potentially get through normalization. Oman also has its own geopolitics to consider. Does this reduce its neutrality? Does it enhance its neutrality by hooking up with Israel, or by at least normalizing with Israel? So those are the two countries that are often listed. Of course, the big one down the road that everyone talks about is Saudi Arabia. Doesn't seem as if Saudi Arabia will be next. But if and when that does happen, that will be another major milestone. Of course, the UAE is a very, very important regional power, and normalizing with it is very, very meaningful. Again, as everyone in India knows how important Dubai is as a financial center and as a transport center, as an aviation center, and as a human hub. But of course, Saudi Arabia is the biggest economy in the Arab world and has influence and soft power throughout the Arab world because of its location and because Mecca and Medina are in its territory. So obviously that would be very, very important if and when it happens.
I'm optimistic that your friendship with United Arab Emirates especially will not only lead to greater understanding between Arabs and Israel, but also Muslims and Jews, because it's a great society under which everybody can flourish. The relationship can flourish in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi. So those places are much different than any other place in the Middle East. I'm not talking about Israel, but about the Muslim countries. So I think your patch up, or you can say the peace deal or friendship, whatever name you can give it, with United Arab Emirates will be a new chapter in the history, and it will write the history in future as well. I'm optimistic regarding that.
Well, listen, you go back as 19 years ago to 9/11. You think about all the journalism that came out in the months after 9/11 and the calls for tolerance to come from within the Muslim world and to reach out and try to build a new era and have a new set of values. And you fast forward to now and you look at what the Emirati leadership in particular, and I single them out because they're the real pioneers here, and what they have done over the past few months, really in the months leading up to this. And then from the moment that this decision was announced until today, everything that they've done is exactly what was asked for by the rest of the world, of the Muslim world, back in 2001 to the letter. They've really taken up the challenge and have run with it in an incredibly impressive way. And it's really emotional, I think, for people in Israel to watch, because this country has traditionally been so isolated in the region and its peace treaties with Egypt and Jordan, while very, very important, and peace is absolutely held, and those peace treaties have been honored by both sides, but never really developed into people-to-people relations or anything warm and a real sense of acceptance. And so you watch what's happening in the UAE. I mean, Things like the Abu Dhabi government sending out a letter to all hotels in the Abu Dhabi Emirate saying you need to have kosher food options on your hotels. Gulrez, that doesn't happen anywhere in the world other than Israel. That every single hotel in a district of a country has been requested to have kosher food available in its room service. I mean, that doesn't exist outside Israel. Even in New York, that doesn't exist, certainly not at every hotel. It's really unbelievable. And to see a newspaper like the Khalij Times, one of the largest English language newspapers in the UAE, running a special section on Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year that we just celebrated over the past week, it is just absolutely amazing. I think it's just staggering to Israelis to see this, and incredibly impressive. And the Emiratis are doing absolutely everything possible to win over Israelis' trust, and it's absolutely working. And there's a concept in social science. I'm not a social scientist myself, but there's a concept in social science called costly signaling, where you do something that to demonstrate just how committed you are to something by doing something that's costly to you. And here, I think the Emiratis want to show how tolerant they are and to show how important tolerance is as part of their national brand and as part of their soft power. And there's no more definitive way to do that than by reaching out and having this normalization with Israel so openly and so warmly. This is the ultimate costly signal, right? To go against decades of Arab consensus, go against public opinion in large parts of the Arab world, and to do something like this just to show how committed they are to this principle and enhance their soft power. It's really an incredible phenomenon. And as for Bahrain, obviously I haven't talked about that, but they're also very, very important. Also, I mean, we've seen the warmth. They're already welcoming Israeli tourists as of now. Of course, the pandemic makes that awfully complicated. I think what separates Bahrain from the UAE, of course, is the internal politics of Bahrain and the intense opposition to the regime and to the monarchy inside Bahrain. And in tandem with that, the opposition to the normalization agreement. And of course, the big question mark in the normalization with Bahrain is how much will the opposition inside the country limit the ability to really implement the normalization on the ground? That's what we don't know yet. And I think Rizzo's perspective, we're certainly hoping for the maximum.
Well, just to inform you, when I talk with my Bahraini Arab friends, they are really happy with this peace deal. So I think that the things are optimistic even in Bahraini society. But I have always maintained one thing vis-a-vis Jordan and Egypt. The friendship was between G to G, government to government, and it was not P2P, people to public to public. But with United Arab Emirates, definitely it will be G2G as well as P2P. And the basis of friendship is established by P2P only. Governments can have warmth, they can have cold relationship, can have warm relationship, but when it comes to people, when the relationships is established between two societies, it is a permanent feature, and I think you guys will have it vis-a-vis, especially United Arab Emirates. I'm optimistic. So Owen, I know that you are an American Israeli. So how will it affect Trump's election?
I think not much. There are so many issues on the American agenda right now. I think the constituency for this issue, particularly when people are undecided about what they think about Donald Trump, it's a pretty small fraction of the public. I don't think that this changes much of anything. It was in one news cycle in the United States. I'm not even sure it was the headline story in the United States during that news cycle. Certainly was in Israel. Our channel had 3 days of special coverage for this. But I'm not sure how much traction it got in the United States, certainly for the long run of an election campaign. I mean, we can say that it has basically been applauded in the U.S., again, from both sides of the aisle. Republicans and Democrats pretty much by consensus saying that this is a legitimate diplomatic achievement for Trump. Biden came out and praised it. So on the merits, it's getting applause from both sides of the aisle. Politically, I don't know how much this resonates in American politics. Again, a very crowded agenda in the U.S. And the reality, Gulrez, even the pandemic, I'm not sure is the major issue in the U.S. The major issue, as it has been since June 16th, 2015, when he came down that escalator in Trump Tower, the major issue is Donald Trump, his personality and his leadership style, the people who love him, the people who hate him. And that is the central issue, has been for 5 years and remains the central issue in American politics. And there is, I think, absolutely nothing at this point that can change that.
Well, it's true. You can love him or hate him, but you can't ignore him. It goes
That's for
well
sure.
for Donald Trump. Can I ask you a multi-trillion-dollar question? As per your analysis, who's winning U.S. election?
Oh, listen, I think, I agree with the conventional wisdom in the US, which is that Biden is the favorite, but there is still a real chance that Trump could win. He could win if there is a problem in the polling that's not really telling us what's going on in an accurate way, especially in an election like this one, where we're in the middle of a pandemic and there's going to be voting by mail, and we don't really know what that means for turnout. And of course, there's still 6 weeks to go. Voting has started in many states, but a lot of people still haven't voted even in those states. And there still are 6 weeks to go. A lot can happen. Donald Trump can narrow the gap. And Trump has an advantage in the U.S. Electoral College. So even if he loses the popular vote, even from what I understand, by 3 or 4 percentage points, he could very well still get the 270 electoral votes and win the election. So he has a big advantage there. There are still 3 debates to go. Because the conventions were virtual, it didn't get as much traction. And because there aren't as many physical events in this campaign, I think the conventional wisdom is, and I agree with it wholeheartedly, that those 3 debates are going to be very, very important. And debates are unpredictable events. They're live TV. And there's 2 guys on the stage. And we don't know what's going to happen. So the debates could be a wild card. But again, you can't escape the numbers. And the numbers consistently over the course of months have said that Joe Biden is winning this election. And you obviously can't ignore that either.
Well, I think debates can be the wild card because looking at the personality of Donald Trump, he's a good debater. And I don't know about Joe Biden. How will he debate? I really don't know.
Yeah, listen, I mean, debates are always a question mark. I mean, Donald Trump is very good on his feet. He is, of course, prone to making mistakes, at least by conventional measure, making mistakes, and even by unconventional measure, often making mistakes. But he does have the ability to think quickly on his feet and be himself. For better or worse, whether one loves Trump or hates him, I don't think anyone argues that he's not being himself when he's out there in the campaign trail or in the debates. As for Biden, it's obviously a politician who's been around the block, but also known for gaffes. And so you're right. He potentially, and he's winning the election. So if you're winning the election and you're going into an event that's a wild card, you have more to lose than the guy you're facing. So certainly there's a lot for Biden potential to lose in the debates, and he'll have to be careful from his perspective.
Okay, Owen, there are many stories regarding the powerful lobby of Jews in United States, and I'm asking you specifically this question because you are an American Israeli Jew. So, how much is the power of American Jews within the system? Are they that strong that they can make or break an election?
I don't think they can make and break an election. And by the way, we saw a number of House candidates or House incumbents who AIPAC, to say the least, would not be happy with, win their primaries easily. Ilhan Omar won her primary easily. Rashida Tlaib won her primary easily. These are members of the U.S. House of Representatives who are anti-Israel and certainly would not be on AIPAC's wish list to have in Capitol Hill. But the fact is, they were elected and are now set to be reelected. They won their primaries easily, didn't really have a challenge that in the end proved effective. So it shows that AIPAC, which is the main pro-Israel lobby group, and other Jews don't always get their way and get everything that they want. So they certainly don't make or break elections. Obviously, American Jews are very, very well organized into an alphabet soup of organizations, and AIPAC is maybe the most powerful of them, and very well organized and very professional in everything that they do. So they can be very effective. But I don't know. I wouldn't exaggerate their power on the other hand, but obviously it's an important group. And obviously you can't forget in 2020 in American politics and pro-Israel politics, the role of evangelical Christians who have their own set of organizations. There are also some are involved in AIPAC and in the Jewish groups, but they also have their own set of parallel pro-Israel evangelical Christian groups. The most important one called CUFI, Christians United for Israel. And they obviously have a lot of influence and are a very, very important constituency to a Republican president, any Republican president. There may be 20%, a little bit less, of the U.S. population vote solidly Republican. So there, it's not just about a small minority organizing. This is a huge block of votes, tens of millions of votes. So it's a group that Donald Trump very much cares about. Not only the issue of Israel, of course, also this issue of the Supreme Court that's popped up in the last few days. It's a very, very important issue for evangelicals. So that's also in Donald Trump's mind. So they're also a big part of the game in the U.S.-Israel relationship right now. So I would say that American Jews and American Jewish groups certainly have power and have influence, but we shouldn't exaggerate it to the
Great
10th degree.
conversation.
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely. It's
go on,
great
go on,
talking
go
to
on. You
you as
want to say
always.
something? Please.
No, I was saying it's great talking to you as always. Absolutely.
And I am sure that this family of Israel and Arab states is going to expand. And very soon we will witness more new members in the family in this
Well,
marriage.
listen, it's a very complicated time, of course, with the pandemic. Numbers in Israel, I don't know if your viewers will know, are absolutely exploding. We're under a lockdown that's potentially
Yeah.
going to be tightened. This is happening during our holiday season, the most important time of the year in the Jewish calendar. And it's just a very, very complicated time with a lot of tension surrounding that. And yet at the same time, we have this incredible process that seemed to just come out of nowhere on a clear blue sky in the middle of August to all of us. And to see it happening, and even more so to see it expanding, is just an unbelievable experience, I think, for people here. And you're right. We'll hope it continues to move at the pace and with the dynamism that it is, and to even expand.
Yes, and we wish that as soon as possible we all must recover from this COVID-19 issue, because it's killing our economies, it's killing our people, and it has changed everything. And I'm sure next New Year, Israeli Jewish New Year, next Shana Tova will be a great one, and we will eat that very sweet honey pie together.
You know your stuff.
We will
That's
have it
right.
together.
There you go.
Okay, thank you, Owen.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You bet.